Welcome back to the Storytelling Dad. This is where we share stories of fathers, their quiet love, their heartbreak, and the sacrifices that often go unseen. If this story speaks to you, I'd be honored if you subscribe and join this family of listeners. Tonight's story is called My Kids Didn't Want Me at Their College Move-In, So I Helped from the Shadows. The morning we packed the car, the sky hung low with a quiet gray, the kind that makes you feel the world is holding its breath. My old truck sat in the driveway, its back open, ready to carry everything my child thought they would need for the next chapter of their life. I folded shirts carefully into a suitcase, stacked books in boxes, and taped them shut, trying not to bend the corners. My hands were steady, but my heart stumbled. This was the day I had both dreaded and dreamed of, the day my child left home for college. Then came the words I wasn't prepared for. Standing in the doorway, shifting uncomfortably, my child said, "Dad, maybe it's better if we don't come. You know, parents can be kind of embarrassing." The sentence landed heavier than any box I had lifted that morning. I froze, a pair of socks in my hands, unable to fold, unable to move. I looked at my child, no longer the little kid who once ran to me for everything, but not yet fully grown either. Their eyes avoided mine, their voice uncertain, but the meaning was sharp. "Dad, stay behind." I nodded, forcing a smile, though inside my chest something cracked quietly. "All right," I whispered, "I'll just make sure you have everything packed." As I taped the last box, I told myself this wasn't rejection. It was just part of growing up. Kids push away, they crave their independence. Still, when I loaded the car, the passenger seat beside me felt colder than it ever had before. The drive to campus, they thought, would be made without me. But they were wrong, because even if they didn't want me by their side, I couldn't let them take this step into the world completely alone. And so, the story began not with celebration, but with a shadow. The next morning, the house felt different. It wasn't emptier yet, the rooms were still filled with boxes, books stacked like towers, and suitcases bulging at the seams. But the silence had changed. It wasn't the usual quiet of early morning. It was a silence that carried distance, a reminder of words spoken the day before that still echoed in my chest. I sat at the edge of the couch, tying my worn work boots, even though there was no work to go to that day. The laces slipped through my hands as if they, too, didn't want to cooperate. In the kitchen, I heard my child moving about, the sound of mugs clinking and the hum of the refrigerator door. Normally, we would have shared breakfast together on a morning like this, but not today. Today, there was only the faint shuffle of feet, the sound of a spoon stirring cereal, and then nothing. I walked in slowly, my boots thudding against the old floorboards I had nailed down years ago. My child was hunched over the counter, scrolling through their phone as if the world beyond the screen was safer than meeting my eyes. I tried to smile, to make it easy, but the words caught in my throat. "Need any help?" I asked, voice softer than I intended. They didn't look up. "I've got it." 3 words, nothing more. And yet, those 3 words felt like a door closing. I wanted to remind them of all the other mornings we had spent just like this. Me pouring orange juice while they packed their backpack, me reminding them not to forget their jacket, me waiting at the bus stop in the rain because I wanted to be the last face they saw before school and the first one when they came back. But instead, I just nodded. "All right," I said, though it wasn't all right at all. The boxes by the door stared back at me. I crouched down and picked one up. It was heavier than I expected, filled with books, the kind that smelled like ink and possibility. My arm strained as I lifted it, but what really made it heavy was not the paper it was. The weight of knowing my child thought my presence was something to be hidden. We loaded the car in silence. My old truck groaned as if it, too, felt the sadness of being asked to carry everything but me. The morning sun stretched long shadows across the driveway, and mine followed behind me, long, thin, clinging like I would follow my child no matter how far they went. I watched them slam the trunk shut, their shoulders tense. "Thanks, Dad," they muttered. as if politeness was an obligation, not a gift. I wanted to say, "You don't need to thank me. This is what fathers do." But I bit my tongue. The ride to campus wasn't mine to take. Not this time. Instead, I stood there as the car rolled away, my reflection shrinking in the rearview mirror until I disappeared completely. But what my child didn't know was that I hadn't given up. I couldn't. Drove separately, keeping a careful distance, my old truck rumbling down the highway behind them. I wasn't there to embarrass them, not to intrude. I was there because love doesn't stay behind when you pack boxes. Love follows, even if it has to travel in silence, even if it has to stay hidden in the shadows. As the miles stretched on, I kept my eyes on their car, whispering to myself as though they could hear me through the glass and the wind, "I'm still here. I've always been here." As the highway curved and the sun rose higher, my eyes kept drifting between the road and the shrinking distance to my child's car. The windshield framed more than just asphalt and taillights. It became a moving screen where memories played one after another, like film reels unspooling without warning. I saw a much smaller version of them, feet barely touching the pedals of a hand-me-down bicycle, their voice crying out, "Don't let go, Dad." I had jogged behind for blocks, steadying the seat, until my legs burned and my chest heaved. And when they finally pedaled off on their own, the joy in their laughter had drowned out my exhaustion. I remember Saturday mornings at the kitchen table when homework sheets were sprawled out like puzzles waiting to be solved. Fractions and history dates, messy pen marks on line paper, things they hated then, things I leaned in close to explain. I wasn't a scholar, not by any stretch, but I tried, because trying was what a father could always do. And there were the storms. Nights when thunder shook the house and lightning painted the windows, when little footsteps raced across the hallway into my room. I would lift them into my arms, whispering, "It's alright, I've got you." My shirt would dampen with tears, but I never let go until sleep reclaimed them. Now, years later, those moments had shrunk into silence. My hands, once called upon to steady, to hold, to fix, were no longer needed. They carried their own boxes now. They walked into their own future. And yet, the image of them clutching my hand in the past burned brighter in my memory than the road right in front of me. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel, steadying myself. The world insisted children grow away from their parents. But the heart, especially a father's heart, rarely follows such rules. The college loomed closer with every mile, and as I drove, the memories kept flooding in, reminding me of who I had been and whispering questions about who I was now. The campus appeared like a city within a city, tall dormitories stretching upward, banners swaying with the breeze, and students spilling onto sidewalks with nervous excitement painted on their faces. Cars lined the street, trunks open, boxes stacked on sidewalks like towers of cardboard hope. Parents bustled around, their voices a mixture of instructions, encouragement, and the bittersweet tone of letting go. I parked my truck a block away, choosing distance over attention. From where I stood, I could see my child's car turn to the main lot, guided by volunteers in bright shirts waving clipboards. Their mother stepped out first, chatting with the staff, her husband by her side, all smiles. My child emerged last, clutching a backpack and looking every bit the adult they wanted to become. I leaned against my truck, half hidden by a tree, and watched. It was their moment. I had promised myself I wouldn't ruin it. Still, my heart ached as I saw other fathers lifting boxes, carrying mini fridges, sweating under the weight but smiling through it. Every trip up the dorm stairs seemed like a final act of fatherhood, a ritual of goodbye, and I wasn't invited to play my part. I gripped the steering wheel, then let go. My hands had known hard work all my life, building fences, repairing roofs, hauling lumber, but now they just dangled empty at my side. For a moment, I thought of driving away, convincing myself it was better this way. But something deeper held me there, an invisible tether that wouldn't let me abandon the scene. I walked closer, careful to keep to the shadows. My child laughed at something their stepfather said, the sound bright and sharp. I swallowed hard. It wasn't jealousy, not really. It was the sting of knowing that the role I had carried for so long could be replaced so quickly in the eyes of others. I watched them disappear inside with the first load, then reappear moments later for the next. And with each trip, I stayed rooted where I was, silent, invisible, but present. When the final box was lifted and the car doors slammed shut, I turned back toward my truck. That was my goodbye. Not spoken, not shared, but felt in every beat of my heart as I walked away from the door I was never allowed to cross. The dorm hallway was a blur of motion, parents dragging suitcases, students hugging goodbye, laughter echoing through open doors. I stood at the far end, half hidden near a vending machine, pretending to study the rows of candy bars while my eyes kept drifting back to my child. They were smiling, arranging posters on the wall with their new roommate, the kind of smile that said, "I belong here." My chest swelled with pride, then deflated almost instantly. I didn't belong there, not in that room, not in that moment. Their stepfather leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, chatting easily with other parents. He looked at home as if he had earned the right to stand there, to be the one everyone associated with my child. My ex-wife hovered close, directing traffic, adjusting blankets on the bed, offering suggestions about desk lamps and extension cords. And me? I stayed in the shadows. Every time they carried up another box, I itched to help. My hands flexed involuntarily, remembering years of lifting bikes into trunks, hauling science fair projects across gym floors, holding onto the edges of furniture so it wouldn't scrape. Helping had always been my role. Now, it had been reassigned. I found myself memorizing details instead. The way their hair fell into their eyes as they bent over a stack of books, the nervous laugh when their roommate cracked a joke, the tiny scar on their wrist from when they fell off the swing years ago. Details no one else in that hallway knew. Details I had earned through years of presence. Someone brushed past me, a father balancing a mini fridge against his chest, muttering apologies as he hurried by. I nodded, stepping aside, suddenly aware of how invisible I must have looked. To everyone else, I was just another man standing in the wrong hallway. To me, I was a father fighting the urge to step forward. I leaned back against the wall, the vending machine humming behind me, and exhaled. This was how it had to be, I told myself. Silent, hidden. Love doesn't always get applause or recognition. Sometimes love waits in the shadows, hoping its quiet devotion might still be enough. That night, as the last of the parents trickled out and the hallway grew quiet, I stayed seated on the hard plastic bench. My child never saw me there, but I saw them, and sometimes that has to be enough. By evening, the dorm had quieted into a different rhythm. The clatter of boxes and voices had given way to murmurs behind closed doors, the occasional burst of laughter from new friends testing their freedom. I stayed near the stairwell, seated on a wooden chair that some kind custodian had left against the wall. From where I sat, I could see into the corridor leading to my child's room. Their door was propped open, a glow of yellow light spilling onto the floor tiles. Inside, shapes moved, gestures, silhouettes, the excitement of first night independence. My body ached to step closer, to lean against that doorway like every other parent had done earlier. But my chair held me firmly, like he understood my role, to remain just outside the frame. That empty chair was more than furniture. It became a mirror of what I had felt for years present, but never asked to sit at the table. A space that could have been mine, but wasn't. I traced my thumb along the wood, rough and splintered at the edges, and thought about the kitchen chair back home where I once read bedtime stories, where I once listened to science projects rehearsed with nervous stutters. The laughter from their room carried down the hall, and I closed my eyes. I pictured the same voice years ago, shouting across the park, "Push me higher, Dad." The echoes were cruel in their sweetness, reminders that I had once been at the center of the story, not its margins. I shifted, the chair creaking under my weight. A janitor passed by, glanced at me, then kept walking, probably assuming I was just another parent reluctant to leave. In a way, he wasn't wrong. Reluctance was stitched into every fiber of me. I looked at the door once more, then at the chair beneath me. A father in the shadows, sitting on borrowed wood, invisible in the place he had dreamed of sharing. Love is strange that way. It demands presence, even when it denies recognition. So I stayed, through the laughter, through the chatter, through the soft closing of the door when night finally arrived. My chair became my vigil, my quiet proof that I was there, even if no one noticed. The dormitory quieted even more as night stretched across the campus. Street lamps flickered on, bathing the sidewalks in pale orange light. I had moved from the hallway chair to a spot beneath the window of my child's room, standing on the grass where shadows pulled thickest. Through the curtain, I could see outlines, shapes moving across the room, laughter spilling faintly into the night air. I stood there, my head tilted up, just as I once had when they were small, and I peeked through their bedroom door to make sure they were asleep. Back then, I was the guardian inside. Now I was the watcher outside. The window became a screen of memory. Each flicker of movement inside the dorm brought forth a ghost from years gone by. My child stacking blocks in the living room, chasing bubbles in the backyard, running into my arms after the first day of school. The laughter inside blurred with the echoes of those younger days, until it was hard to tell which was memory and which was present. I reached up, resting my hand gently on the cold brick of the building, almost as if the contact could bridge the distance. My palm pressed against stone, but in my mind I felt the softness of a child's hand once curled into mine. The other parents had long since left. Cars were gone, dorm lights dimmed one by one, but I remained rooted under that window. A father in the shadows, listening for sounds that told him his child was safe, even if those sounds no longer belonged to him. The night breeze tugged at my jacket, urging me to move, but I couldn't. My love, it seemed, had turned me into a sentinel of memories, unwilling to step away from the window that no longer opened for me. That was where I stayed, silent, invisible, but present, holding on to the pieces of a life that only I remembered in full.
The dormitory halls carried a different weight at night. Fluorescent bulbs flickered overhead, humming faintly, casting long rectangles of light that stretched across the floor. I found myself sitting beneath one of them, my shadow elongated, stretching thin as if trying to reach the door where my child slept. The light was harsh, nothing like the warm glow of our old home's kitchen lamp, but I welcomed it. In the loneliness of that corridor, the light gave me something tangible to share. It reminded me of the nights I left the hallway light on back home, just so my child could sleep without fear. I would sit outside their bedroom with a book in hand, pretending to read, but really listening, always listening. Now, decades later, the scene had repeated itself. I was once again seated under a hallway light, waiting for them to feel safe, though they had no idea I was there. The irony struck me hard. They had asked me not to come, not to embarrass them, yet here I was, still trying to protect them. Even from afar, other students passed by occasionally, their footsteps quick, their conversations low. None of them looked twice at me. To them, I was just another figure misplaced in the wrong place. But to me, the light above was a vigil. It cast its pale beam not for the hallway, but for the bond I refused to let fade. The shadows wavered as the bulb buzzed, and for a moment I thought of all the times love exists in this in-between, neither bright enough to be celebrated, nor dark enough to vanish. Just a steady glow in a forgotten corner. That was me, a father in the shadows, keeping watch under the hum of a hallway light that had become both my shelter and my confession. The stairwell was colder than the hallway, concrete steps holding on to the chill of the night. I sat 2 flights down from my child's dorm floor, far enough not to be noticed, close enough to still feel tethered. Each time a door opened above, the echo of footsteps rippled downward, magnified by the narrow walls. That echo reminded me of all the mornings I used to hear hurried steps on our wooden stairs at home, the thump of sneakers, the backpack swinging wildly as they rushed for the bus. Back then, I would call out, "Don't forget your lunch," and hear a muffled, "Got it, Dad," before the door slammed shut. Those sounds had been my morning music, proof of a life in motion. Now, the stairwell's echoes carried only strangers. Students climbed past me, chatting about classes, dorm mixes, future plans. Their voices bounced around me, filling the air with dreams that no longer included me. I stayed quiet, letting them pass, like a shadow fixed in stone. I leaned forward, elbows on knees, listening to the rhythm of the building. Every slam of a door above felt like punctuation on the story of distance growing between my child and me. Yet still, I stayed. The stairwell was not comfortable, but it was honest. It gave me a place to exist without being seen. A hollow chamber for a father's unspoken devotion. The echoes came and went, fading into silence, then swelling again. And in that cycle, I realized something: love doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it waits patiently in the stairwell, repeating itself softly, hoping one day it will be heard again. That night, I was the echo, faint, unnoticed, but undeniably present. By the time midnight crept in, I had drifted outside the dorm building. The campus was hushed, only the faint hum of a vending machine breaking the silence. I found an old wooden bench near the entrance, its paint chipped, its slats creaking as I lowered myself onto it. From where I sat, I could see the tall glass doors of the lobby. Students came and went earlier in the evening, laughing in clusters, holding boxes, arms full of clothes and supplies. Now the doors were still, reflecting only the glow of the street lamp above. The bench felt familiar. How many times in my life had I sat in places like this? Waiting outside ballet practice, waiting in the car line after school, waiting in the bleachers for a game to start. Fatherhood, I realized, was mostly made of waiting, quiet hours spent in places just like this, doing nothing more than being there. But this waiting was different. I was no longer invited to the inside. I wasn't the parent carrying boxes or arranging sheets on a dorm bed. I was the silhouette left outside, still lingering because my heart couldn't yet let go. The wood beneath me groaned as if carrying the weight of my silence. I leaned forward, elbows on knees, staring at those doors, hoping for a glimpse, any glimpse, of my child walking past. If only for a moment. I thought of the years behind us, how many times they had once looked for me in a crowd, eyes searching until they found my face. Now I was the one searching, hoping the glass might reveal theirs. But the doors stayed empty, the campus asleep, and the bench kept me company in my solitude. That night, I was the man outside, love bound to a bench that bore witness to what it meant to be present even when unseen. The sky had shifted while I waited. Clouds rolled in without warning, and soon the drizzle began. It tapped lightly at first against the stone steps of the dorm, a faint percussion that seemed almost harmless. But within minutes, the drizzle grew heavier, coating the stairway with a sheen of water that glistened beneath the street lamp. I stayed where I was, sitting on the lower step, rain dampening my shoulders and streaking down the sleeves of my jacket. The water seeped into the seams, cold against my skin, but I didn't move. Leaving felt impossible. This was still their night of beginning, and I wanted to remain close, even if it meant nothing more than being soaked in silence. The steps reminded me of all the doorways I had waited on before, outside classrooms, theaters, gyms, always there, always just beyond the threshold. Tonight was no different. Fatherhood had once again put me on the steps, looking upward, hoping to be remembered. Students hurried past, pulling jackets tight, umbrellas overhead, some glancing my way with puzzled expressions. To them, I was just a misplaced man on a wet stairway. To me, the rain felt like punctuation, underlining the truth I had already lived. Sometimes love doesn't get invited inside. Sometimes it lingers at the margins, weathering storms that no one else notices. The water pooled at my feet, gathering in small reflections of light. I stared into them, seeing fragments of a father's devotion scattered on wet stone. That night, I was the man on the steps, waiting through the rain, not for acknowledgement, but for the chance to stay close. Even from the shadows, through the dormitory's wide front window, I could see the faint glow of life inside. A few students gathered in the lounge, laughing over a shared pizza box, their voices muted by the thick pane of glass. I stood outside in the cool night air, watching from the other side, as though I were observing a world that no longer belonged to me. That window became a mirror of everything I felt, close enough to see, yet too far to touch. My reflection stared back faintly, a tired man framed by the glass, blurred and doubled by the glare of the lights inside. I pressed my hand into my pocket, resisting the ache to tap the glass, to wave, to make myself known, but I stayed silent. I remembered how many times I had once sat by our own kitchen window at home, waiting for my child's silhouette to appear in the driveway after school. That simple glimpse had been enough to brighten a long workday. Now, I found myself on the opposite side, longing for even the smallest acknowledgement. Students inside sprawled comfortably on couches, tossing jokes back and forth, their futures ahead of them, their families somewhere else. I wondered if any of them knew that outside their laughter stood a father, carrying years of devotion invisible in that moment. The glass separated more than two spaces, it separated eras of my life. On one side was youth, beginnings, possibility. On the other was me, a shadow, marked by history, anchored by love, unable to cross over. The window did not open. It was not meant to. It was designed only for looking through, and that was what I did. I looked, quietly, without demand, knowing love sometimes has no choice but to remain pressed against the glass. That night, I was the man outside the window, watching, waiting, hoping my reflection alone might carry the weight of everything I could not say.
The next morning, as sunlight washed over the campus, I lingered near the cafeteria. The smell of fresh coffee drifted out each time the heavy glass door opened, mixing with laughter and the rustling of backpacks. I stayed just outside, on the edge of the doorway, where shadows still clung even in daylight. Students filed past me, some yawning, some chatting about classes, their voices carrying that carefree tone of beginnings. My child was among them, walking quickly with new friends, head bent toward a phone, laughter spilling out without pause. They never noticed me standing at the threshold. The doorway felt like a line drawn between us, a border I could not cross. Once, I had walked through doorways, holding their hand, guiding them to classrooms, to birthday parties, to doctor's appointments. Now, the doorway no longer welcomed me. It simply swung open and shut for others, while I stood to the side, unseen. I kept watching, hoping for the slightest turn of the head, the briefest glance, something that said they still knew I was near. But the door closed again, and I was left staring at my own reflection in the glass, distorted and faint, like a ghost of fatherhood. For everyone else, it was just a doorway to breakfast. For me, it was a reminder. Love sometimes remains in the shadows, patient and waiting, even when the world moves on without it. That day, I was a man outside the doorway, close enough to hear the laughter inside, but destined to remain on the step where love lingers quietly. Near the student center stood a tall bulletin board, layered with papers, posters, and bright flyers for clubs and activities. Each sheet of paper announced a chance at belonging debate teams, music auditions, volunteer groups, late-night movie nights. The colors spilled across the cork like fragments of possibility. I lingered in front of it, pretending to read. Students brushed past me, pinning up fresh notices, laughing as they planned futures together. My child's name would soon be among those sign-up lists, etched into new circles of friends, new memories that would not include me. I traced my eyes across the layers of announcements, wondering how many would stay pinned, how many would be torn down, forgotten, replaced. That board felt like a canvas of their youth, vibrant and temporary. It reminded me of all the times I had once taped drawings, report cards, or small achievements onto our refrigerator at home. Each piece of paper had meant the world then. Each had been a declaration. You belong. You matter. Now, the bulletin board declared their belonging to a new world, a place where my presence was unnecessary. I could only watch from the edges, like a note that no one read. The wind tugged at one corner of a flyer, peeling it slightly from the board. I pressed it back in with my hand, almost instinctively, as if fixing even a stranger's paper could stand in for the care I no longer knew how to give. That afternoon, I was the man by the bulletin board reading words that weren't mine, standing in front of futures that would never ask for my handwriting. As the evening deepened, I found myself drawn to the edge of the campus parking lot. Rows of cars stretched across the asphalt, their metal frames reflecting the fading glow of the sun. Students came and went, their voices carried on the cool breeze, calling out goodbyes or making plans for the night ahead. I stood near my old pickup, hands tucked into my jacket pockets, watching from a distance. This lot had become my place of pause, a quiet ground where I could be near without intruding. I knew that somewhere among the laughter and backpacks, my child was beginning a life that no longer needed my hand to guide it. Each set of headlights sweeping across the pavement reminded me of nights long ago when I had waited in parking lots outside soccer practice, outside school concerts, even outside movie theaters with friends. Back then, the sight of me waiting had been a comfort, a constant. Tonight, it was only a shadow in the periphery. I listened to the sound of tires crunching gravel, the slamming of doors, the chorus of young voices buzzing with freedom. None of it was mine to join. Still, I stayed. Because waiting, whether outside a dorm or in a dark lot, had always been part of being a father. In the parking lot, I was no longer a driver, no longer a guide. I was only the man leaning against a truck, steady and silent, holding on to the unspoken hope that my presence, even unnoticed, still meant something. That night, the parking lot became my vigil, a place where shadows stretched long, but love remained, quiet and patient, under the dim orange lamps. It was just a single photo, a blurry snapshot, taken by my child's roommate on a quiet night when the campus was still. It showed me sitting on the hallway floor outside the dorm, leaning against the wall, my old jacket pulled close, a box of tools beside me, and a faint smile I didn't even realize I was wearing. The caption was simple: "Some dads don't stop helping, even when they're told not to come." By morning, the photo had spread far beyond campus. Thousands of people shared it, each leaving words I never expected. That's real love. A father's presence is priceless. He deserves to be seen. For the first time, the shadows I had lived in became light. My quiet love, unnoticed for so long, was witnessed by strangers everywhere. And slowly, my own child began to see it too. One evening, they found me again, this time not outside the door, not in the parking lot, not in the shadows. They stood in front of me with tears in their eyes, holding the phone with that viral photo glowing on the screen. "Dad," they whispered, voice trembling. "I didn't know. I didn't realize how much you've always been there." I said nothing at first. Words often fail where silence has carried weight for years. But then I placed a hand on their shoulder and replied softly, "You never needed to know how much. You only needed to feel it." We stood together. No walls, no shadows, no doorways between us, just father and child, finally seen, finally understood. Because in the end, love doesn't ask for recognition. It doesn't demand a place at the table or an invitation to moving day. It waits. It watches. It builds from the quiet corners until one day it shines so bright that even the darkest shadows can no longer hide it. That night, as we walked side by side across the campus, I no longer felt invisible. I was not the man in the shadows. I was simply what I had always been, Dad. Thank you for staying with me through this story. I hope it touched your heart. Please take care of yourself, cherish your loved ones, and may your family always be healthy and full of warmth.